Hey everybody, Colton here, and we had a busy week last week, right? With the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, and of course, lots of press and interviews for Daredevil Born Again Season Two's premiere that's happening this week on, I believe, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
We got a question submitted to the Ask Colton email address from Jacob. Jacob writes, "Hey Colton, Charlie Cox says he is not in Spider-Man Brand New Day or Avengers Doomsday. Do you believe him?" All right. Well, thanks so much for the question, Jacob. Do I believe him? Yes and no. Let's talk about it. So it's no secret that I love, like absolutely adore the first two seasons of Daredevil from the Netflix era. Season three, it was also fine. Defenders, it was fine. It wasn't bad. I really, really liked the two seasons of Punisher. That first season of Jessica Jones and that first season of Luke Cage were both great. Anyway, big fan of Charlie Cox as Daredevil and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, John Bernthal's Punisher. They're great. And I'm really glad that Marvel decided to just make them fucking MCU canon already. They were already like loose canon to the MCU for a long time with like direct references to the Avengers and events of like MCU films. But as the seasons progressed and that kind of world began to grow, they did like begin to ignore some of the bigger things going on in the mainline MCU, and the references kind of became less and less. And then there was the MCU, which at the time was just like movies. They never referenced the Netflix shows. And that's because they were two completely separate studios, different companies, however you want to say it, that were making these projects. Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, they answered directly to Bob Iger. No longer did Feige answer directly to Ide Perlmutter, who was over Marvel Entertainment. They had a falling out, I guess you could say. Perlmutter's a fucking idiot. But they had a falling out. So Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios, they just started reporting directly to the CEO of Disney. And the Netflix shows, they were part of Marvel Entertainment still, or Marvel Television, or whatever it was at the time. And that was overseen by Perlmutter. So these two things, especially when you take into account that Perlmutter and Feige didn't get along, they were just really disconnected. Now, when the Netflix shows were canceled and the time passed that had to be like allotted within the contract for Marvel to actually start using the characters again, once that time passed, Marvel Studios decided to bring back Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio and even John Bernthal for more MCU appearances. The plan was for them to be playing different versions of the characters, and the Netflix shows would just be like this very loose Elseworlds type history that didn't really count. Their plan was to just bring back these main actors in their same beloved roles, but to basically ignore the history and all of the stuff that happened in those shows. They weren't bringing back Foggy or Karen. They were going to recast Vanessa. It was weird. And they had this plan for like a much lighter tone. So after Matt Murdock made his MCU movie debut in Spider-Man No Way Home, the guy over Marvel Television, which was now fully under Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige's control, he began pushing for a Daredevil show. Now, we saw Fisk make like very odd and out of place appearances in Hawkeye and Echo for some reason. Daredevil was in She-Hulk, which I was actually okay with. But Marvel's plan was to do this very Marvel Disney Plus feeling version of the show. They didn't bring back any of the original creators, and they ended up making a show that Kevin Feige was actually really unhappy with. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it was the strikes that were going on at the time where they had to, stop production temporarily on the show. I think that's when Feige actually got into the editing room and started watching, what they had so far. And that's when he said, we need to take advantage of the fact that we have some time here to rework this thing before we get back into production. And that resulted in them essentially caving and doing what fans really wanted, which was to canonize the old shows almost 100% and bring back the original creatives. And they completely reworked this show, and you can feel it. I mean, if you watch Daredevil Born Again Season 1, you can feel how the premiere episode and the last two episodes, those of which were done like primarily by the old team from the Netflix era that wasn't brought back for the new show initially, you can feel how that first and the last two episodes just feel so much different in tone and overall feel than the middle of the season, which was done by the new people they brought in initially before bringing back the original creators. It's just two different shows, like, strung together. And I was looking forward to season 2 being fully done by the same team and feeling just being better overall. And I'm kind of disappointed to say that even with season 2 being done by the OG creatives from the start and not this mix mashing of, like this duct tape mess of, trying to salvage this show and piece different things together that just don't really work together, it's still kind of feeling like they're trying to walk this tightrope and like they're still shackled to what was set up for that original plan of what Born Again would be. There's still so much of that original idea for the show, for the reboot show, that is bleeding into this. And I think it's hurting it. And it's like we're still watching two different shows almost. And listen, please listen. Don't misunderstand. I like Daredevil Born Again. I like season 1 of that show. And I liked the first episode of season 2 that I have seen. It's a good show. I'm glad they're making it. I am excited for the season, okay? So I don't want to hear, oh, he's a hater. No. Really enjoying it, but it still just doesn't feel like it used to. And let me be clear about that. I'm fine with it not feeling like it used to if the new feeling is just as good or better, but I'm just not digging Born Again as much as I did the original. I feel like a lot of the flow of storytelling and the tone is starting to come back a little. But one thing that is really just a big hang up for me is they have still just completely abandoned color correction. And I know that that's like a little nitpick and that maybe a lot of people won't care about that. But I do think that even the casual viewer, while they might not be able to like have the knowledge of like filmmaking and stuff to be able to say, well, it's the color correction that's off and there's no dynamic range and no contrast. Well, they might not be able to tell you the technical definitions of what is wrong. I think even a casual viewer could tell you, yeah, this looks a little off. This looks a little cheap. That original series just had so much dynamic range and saturation and depth and attention to detail in the cinematography. Well, Born Again, even season 2, it still just feels like this desaturated, let's spill milk all over the lens, just ugly show from a color perspective. And again, that might sound nitpicky, but that's important to me. Like the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, it was awesome. And one of the things that got me the most excited in that trailer was the color palette. It looks like a fucking movie. It looks like a comic book brought to life, not just some digital right out of the box assembly line piece of content. And I was hoping that Born Again Season 2 would get back to that. And they did for the opening scene. And then it just went right back to this. Anyway, all of that comes from a place of love, okay? If I didn't care about the show, I wouldn't care enough to bitch about where I think it's, falling short. I love these characters. I love the actors who are playing them. And I'm looking forward to the crossover that we're getting with the films and the shows, with now Punisher appearing in Spider-Man Brand New Day, and with Daredevil very likely also appearing in Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is awesome, and it's the reason that we embrace the sacrifices that come with a cinematic universe, so that we can actually see the characters interact and see a storyline have like giant through lines that can be appreciated by dedicated fans who watch everything. And the reason I say sacrifice is because a shared cinematic universe that encompasses all of these different shows and movies and characters, that can be a pain in the ass for both the people making the show and even the people watching the shows and the movies. Because if you miss one thing, you feel like you're behind. And for those making the projects, they have like a whole list of things that they need to make sure that they aren't contradicting. And when you have a big cinematic universe, you're met with, well, where is so-and-so? And why didn't they come help? Or you're met with like giant events in the films disrupting the natural flow of a season by season grounded show like Daredevil. Or disrupting a character like Spider-Man or like a Captain America or something, having like a traditional trilogy. That's just not possible because you have so many other things going on in between, and those characters are being pulled into these big team-up movies. But we make that sacrifice because it's worth it in exchange for seeing these characters interact with each other. So we know that Matt Murdock, he can appear in Spider-Man movies, right? There's no legal reason he can't, unlike with some unclear reason that Kingpin can't. Makes no sense, but I won't get into that now. We know Matt Murdock can appear in Spider-Man movies or in MCU movies because he was in No Way Home. So If a Spider-Man movie is going to have Punisher in it and the Hand, I think we can safely assume that Matt Murdock shows up. In fact, I think we could see Matt land himself in prison maybe by the end of the season. And this scene where we see Spider-Man fighting the Hand in a cell block, I think that could be in the same prison that Matt is locked up in. And maybe Spider-Man is there protecting Matt from the Hand who are trying to come kill him in prison or something. And this shot could very well be Daredevil and Spider-Man fighting the Hand. Now, Charlie Cox did say on Jimmy Kimmel the other night that he is not in Spider-Man Brand New Day or Avengers Doomsday. And look, while I think that he is lying about not being in Brand New Day, I believe him that he's not in Doomsday. His denials alone were so different between his Spider-Man denial and his Avengers denial. So I think the reason that he's definitely in Brand New Day and the reason he's not in Doomsday is because Marvel is still trying to figure out how the hell they want to handle the level of connectivity between their movies and their shows. How do you do Daredevil Born Again Season 3 after Avengers Doomsday shows the entire universe get destroyed? Well, the simplest answer is have Season 3 take place before the events of Doomsday. And that gives you the ability to tell this very isolated Daredevil story that is literally within isolation with this prison setting. And that makes it to where you can do the third and perhaps even the final season of the Born Again series in its current form without having some big interruption in between, Daredevil fighting Doctor Doom. The cool thing about Born Again is season 1 and season 2 didn't have anything interrupting between the two seasons or Daredevil off doing something else, and that makes it to where you can just go from season 1 into season 2 like you would with any traditional TV show or like they did with the original Netflix TV show or streaming show. Except for when you cannot go from season 2 of Daredevil into season 3 of Daredevil because you need to have seen Defenders. Anyway, this brings me back to what I mean when I say it's a give and take. Would it be awesome to see Daredevil and Avengers Doomsday? Of course it would be, but you have to decide which thing you'd rather have. Do you want Daredevil in that bigger world of working with the Avengers and fighting cosmic threats, or do you want to be able to have a Daredevil show that feels connected yet simultaneously like its own thing that isn't all tied up in the multiverse and the cosmic whatever and all of that stuff? And the movies, they have to, on their end, they have to ask themselves if they want to introduce a character in Daredevil that, sure, everyone knows who Daredevil is, but not everyone has seen the show, or at least, every season of the show. So if you bring Daredevil in as a crucial character to your films, then that's kind of making it to where you need to have seen TV shows to watch a movie, and it's never a good idea to have a show be a required viewing for a film. Now, Marvel, they're in a position where they have to decide if they want a Daredevil show that is heavily connected to the MCU and has Daredevil in that bigger world, or if they want the more grounded, gritty, and personal Daredevil show that can really sway in tone and have that more R-rated or mature audiences only type feeling that this new version of the show, after they pivoted and brought back the original people, they have to decide which one of those they want to have. Do they want to have Daredevil as part of this big MCU where he's taking trips up to the top of Avengers Tower, or do they want him, down below in Hell's Kitchen and have his own little pocket cinematic universe of things going on? Those things being more street level, smaller budget type things that you can do on TV and it just feels right. And I think that is what they're going to do with Daredevil. They have no plans for a Daredevil movie. They want to keep doing Daredevil on TV and maybe have him pop up in Spider-Man movies, which would be awesome. Please do that. But as soon as you have Daredevil on freaking Battle World fighting Doctor Doom and, oh, Daredevil, we need you to distract Kang, then it gets messy and you end up trying to have your cake and eat it too. So I think the plan for Daredevil is to keep him street level, prioritize him as a TV property, prioritize his show, and, stop having so much crossover between the film side and the TV side. Because while it is cool, it ultimately does more harm than good, because when you try to do both, when you try to have the characters jump between the movies and the TV shows, instead of fully focusing on it being a TV show or fully focusing on it being a movie character in a movie cinematic universe versus the TV cinematic universe, and having that barrier there instead of just having it all just crossed over and shows being required viewing to see movies, when you do that, neither can reach its true potential because it's got 1 foot over here and 1 foot over there instead of having both feet firmly on the ground of what they are doing. And I think the perfect answer to this issue, and still kind of have your cake and eat it too a little bit, is to have Daredevil and Punisher be reoccurring characters in Spider-Man films where they feel like they're supposed to be there because they aren't leaving their corner of the MCU to be in a Spider-Man movie. They're still in their street level corner. Spider-Man is a character who naturally flows between street level and cosmic, and who is a movie only character, which makes that flow much easier. Plus, he's like a, street level vigilante, but he can also lift a bus over his head. So he kind of naturally fits in both worlds. He can fight bad guys with beanies on, and he can also fight the Mad Titan. But when Spider-Man's not off on an Avengers mission and he's doing a more lower stakes thing in a Spider-Man movie, Daredevil and Punisher can be great reoccurring side characters in Spider-Man films that even if you haven't seen the Daredevil or Punisher shows, you can still enjoy their presence and their role in Spider-Man films because, well, one, they just fit so naturally because in Spider-Man films, Spider-Man isn't typically fighting a cosmic threat. He's fighting a New York threat, and he's at least having a few like street level missions in the first and second act where he's fighting like, just lower level like gang crime and stuff like that. And the general audience can be like, hey, there's that Daredevil and Punisher guy that I'm familiar with. They're Marvel characters. And hey, they've been popping up in these Spider-Man movies and they have these funny and badass interactions with Spider-Man. And if you have seen the Daredevil and Punisher shows and you are keeping up with the new seasons of their shows and like Punisher Special and all that, then you get the added enjoyment of seeing your favorite TV heroes on the big screen from time to time. But it doesn't hurt the shows themselves or their through lines because their involvement in a street level mission in a Spider-Man movie, that's a very feasible thing that they could have very well been up to between seasons, and it doesn't disrupt what they're doing in their main focus, which is their shows. But if you have Frank Castle wanting to tell something to Doctor Doom on Battleworld, as awesome as that would be, it also makes it difficult to go back to the ground level of the show. Have I rambled enough? I feel like I've kind of been talking in circles. I hope that was all coherent. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is it looks like Marvel has decided that Daredevil is a TV character first and foremost, and he can have movie cameos. So don't expect him to have like big movie roles. Don't expect him to have like a leading role in an Avengers movie. We could see him pop up, I think, in Avengers Secret Wars because Secret Wars is like an exception. I think everybody will likely appear in Secret Wars. Plus, Secret Wars would come out between season 3 and a potential season 4 of Born Again. Season 4, by the way, I think would likely be a bit of a like brand new day for Daredevil, so to speak. I think by the 4th season of Born Again, they will have dropped the Born Again subtitle and they'll be telling a new story. And it'll be happening in the new reset post-Secret Wars MCU. So that would kind of line up good to have Daredevil season 3 unfazed by like the events of Doomsday and stuff. Maybe it ends with like a Doomsday tease or something, or a Secret Wars tease. Have Daredevil maybe pop up in Secret Wars, and then the MCU resets, and that sets the stage for them to continue doing Daredevil, like I had mentioned, doing the TV show, just primarily focusing on him being a TV character. And he can have some fun crossover with the next 2 films of this new Spider-Man trilogy, which is also being massively interrupted by Doomsday and Secret Wars. But hey, that's the give, right? So that we can get Spider-Man in the MCU and have him in Avengers movies and maybe even see Daredevil pop up in Secret Wars. I'm interested to know, do you guys think Daredevil pops up in Secret Wars? Because it does kind of line up perfectly that they could finish Born Again, do 3 seasons of Born Again without it being interrupted, then have Secret Wars come out, have Daredevil pop up in that. And then you could do a new Daredevil show that is essentially season 4 of Born Again, or season 7 of just Daredevil shows in general, because we had 3 seasons of the original series, and then we'll have 3 seasons of Born Again. They could do another, have that kind of be their thing, that they do 3 seasons of different Daredevil subtitle arcs. So I think that that's kind of the direction they'll be taking, is Daredevil will continue being primarily a show character in the new MCU post-Secret Wars, and the one place that we could see him pop up from time to time is like in Spider-Man movies, because that just makes sense. And maybe they could even do, like, I think that the phase, what will that be? Phase 7 of the MCU, because we're in phase 6 now. Phase 7 of the MCU it's going to have a lot of team movies that aren't the big like culmination event movie. Like Avengers movies are going to go back to, I think, just being Avengers movies. And we're going to have the X-Men movies, Fantastic Four movies. So we could see a scenario where they do like a crossover type team up movie that's primarily a Spider-Man movie, but brings in Daredevil, Punisher, and some other like characters. And that kind of fills that void of having some team up movies, which we haven't gotten a lot in the multiverse saga. Anyway, I'm going to go. Let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comments below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. I'm Colton Ogburn. I'll see you next time. Bye.